Hi, it's Ann from the Lowdown on Cancer. And, we've been speaking this month about recurrence. And I believe that fear of recurrence is really one of those things that resides in the back of our head and is the foremost concern for us as patients, for the people that love us, for caregivers. And that's what we're talking about right now. We're interviewing experts about recurrence. We're talking about innovators about recurrence. But I love the fact that people within our community would like to share their experience of their recurrence. And so today I'm honored to have one of our community members, and I'd love to welcome Mary Myers Pasquino to the Lowdown on Cancer. And I feel like many of us divide our lives from, before cancer and after diagnosis. So before your original cancer diagnosis, what were you up to?
Well, I graduated from college, got married about 3 months after I graduated from college. Didn't mean to do that, but it's life. And we were living in a small town down south, just kind of getting started on life. I was working for a daycare center, making minimum wage, which at that time was $2.50 an hour.
So what was your original diagnosis? And if you don't mind, how old were you at that time?
I was 23. I'd been married for 13 months. My poor husband come home and say, "Hey, guess what, honey?" It was the 1 year of my life when I did not have health insurance. So my original diagnosis was melanoma. It was a spot that looked sort of like a melted chocolate chip on my abdomen. And, I'd taken a toxicology class in college, so I went back and looked it up before the days of Google. And there was like a 40% 5-year survival rate. So at 23, that was big. Kind of a, existential reordering of all your priorities, sort of big.
What was your treatment path with that original diagnosis?
They did a biopsy and then they did a wide excision. And because I didn't have insurance, I recovered at home. They did it as an outpatient procedure. And then they said they got all clean edges and it looked good. And the doctor said, well, you should follow up with a dermatologist and get checked every 6 months. So I did that.
And at the end of your treatment, did your oncologist or your doctor ever discuss recurrence with you?
No, not. This was, like I said, it was back in '86.
How long has it been from your original treatment to your recurrence?
33 years.
Wow, 33 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I told you for 25 years, I went to see a dermatologist. And when I moved to a different state, she said, "You're probably good. It's been 25 years. You don't really need to get checked every 6 months." So I didn't when I moved to New Jersey, where I live now. But I found, a lump under my armpit. And of course, everybody was concerned about breast cancer. So I went and, I went to my primary and he recommended that I get a mammogram. So I did that. And from that, they discovered it wasn't actually in the breast. And then they did a biopsy and it turned out to be malignant melanoma. And the oncologist said, it's absolutely a recurrence of the original one. And I said, 33 years? And he said, yep. I said, all right.
You were getting routine follow-up, and then a physician said, you've been fine for 25 years. You probably don't need any more of a follow-up. How long was that until you found your lump under your armpit?
About 7.5 years.
I know, and I think that this is pretty typical for all of us. When we hear the word cancer, it really flips our world upside down.
Yeah.
What was it like when you heard the word recurrence? Was that different from your first diagnosis?
Very, yeah. My first diagnosis, I went through all of the questions about, because I was, like I said, 23 and pretty much newly married, about like what makes life worth living. Like at that time, I didn't know if I was going to be one of the 40% that made it to 5 years or not. So like, what was I going to do with my life? What was important? And it really helped me to refocus on family and my work. I love being a social worker, friends, things like that. And because I've had that focus, my adult life, the recurrence was very different. It was, I never had that same kind of pit of the stomach terror that I had with the first one. I think both because I answered some of those big questions and because it wasn't such an unknown, because I'd done it before, or so I thought. This one was much different than the first one. But I called my husband to let him know the diagnosis, and he said, "Oh, so we're going through this together again?" And I said, "Yeah." And that was sort of all it was to it, not not that it wasn't, I mean, it was a big deal, but it was just um, sort of like we knew we had the skills to handle it. We'd been through it before and come out the other side, and we could do it this time too. Didn't realize this was going to be a lot different than the first time, though.
So if you don't mind, share with us what that difference was.
Well, the first time, like I said, I had an in-office procedure for the biopsy, and then I had the white excision, and that was really about it. I had a scar on my tummy about 5 inches long. This time they did immunotherapy, and it was a combination of Opdivo and Yervoy, which normally, from what my oncologist said, they do 4 infusions. Well, I got to 2 infusions, and my body just kind of went haywire. I had horrible joint pain. I became incredibly diabetic. I had been, in July, because I was pretty overweight, not pretty over, well, yeah, I was chubby. I had lots of roundness to me. And my primary was like, your A1C just hit 8. That means you're diabetic. I went back in October, 3 months later, and it was 11, which is like dangerous. And we started looking at I started testing my blood sugars, and they were in the 300 and 400 range, and sometimes up to 500, which is also really dangerous. So there was that. I just a lot of nausea, a lot of like muscle weakness. Fortunately, being a therapist involves a lot of sitting on your butt in a chair. So, but even like I work in an agency, so the ladies at the front desk stopped calling me to come get my clients. They started walking my clients down to me so I wouldn't have to walk. And that's like actually not allowed, but they were going to do it anyways because I kept falling and things like that. But I didn't want to just sit on the couch. I didn't think that was going to be good for my mental health or my physical health. So I kept working 3 days a week. So I'd work a day, take off a day, work a day, take off a day. Don't know if that was the right decision or not, but made it through. So they did the CAT scans in June and early July, and then in October, nothing really seemed to have changed, and my body was in such disarray. They said, we're not going to do anything else. And in January, some things were smaller, other things were the same, but it's generally not, I mean, it's still there. It still could come back again. And, having been 33 years in between, who knows, but everything just keeps on getting smaller. All the lesions seem to be generally either staying the same or getting smaller. So at this point, they're not going to mess with that.
For a lot of us, the fear of recurrence can really negatively impact, and you as a social worker understand the mental health components of it. It can so negatively impact a patient's life. How has this recurrence impacted your life now? Because you had alluded about it made you think about, living life differently and, the path that you took. So I'm wondering, was there more of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely I've always tried to focus on being grateful for what I have. Well, maybe not always, but especially since my first diagnosis. Um, and I think I've doubled down on that, especially because there were days when you had to hang your hat on something, and you look for something to be grateful for. Again, what's important in life, and it's not a lot of the things that we worry about. They're just not that important.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And,
right.
you
Yeah,
know, in my own experience, I don't sweat some of the big stuff anymore either.
right. Yeah, well,
Because
next to cancer, a lot of it looks pretty small.
exactly. So, do you have any advice or suggestions or recommendations to our community around the subject of recurrence or about recurrence?
You just have to appreciate each day that you get and appreciate the people who are there for you.
I just want to thank you so much for taking time, for raising your hand and saying you'd be
Sure.
willing to speak with us. And I truly appreciate you taking this time. I know you're busy, and I'm going to be very excited to share your information. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you make time for what's important.
Thank you for watching the Lowdown on Cancer presented by the Cancer Fund. To learn more about what's coming in future episodes, visit us at www.cancerfund.com. While you're there, check out past episodes and be sure to click Join Us to become a member of the Cancer Fund community. As a member of the community, you'll receive early access to new interviews as well as other announcements. Make sure to connect to all of our social media channels so you don't miss a thing. In addition to getting early access to new episodes of the Lowdown on Cancer, Cancer Fund members play a critical role in driving cancer innovation forward so that one day we can more than hope. We can actually beat cancer. Thank you for joining us on this journey.